The Hornets add some big man depth as they get ready for post-All-Star break. Then we welcome Ky Carlin of the Philadelphia 76ers beat to talk about Elton Brand as potential general manager. All today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. There's Doug Branson. You can find his work on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. And I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. via Wes and Walker. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. You can go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. We'll talk about Elton Brand a little bit later. Doug had a conversation with Ky Carlin on the 76ers beat, works for USA Today. We had the interview with Evan Damerel of Locked On Cavs about Mike Gansey. So we're trying to keep you up to date on all the potential candidates who could be that next shot caller for the Charlotte Hornets. Elton Brand could be that guy, so we'll give you the lowdown. Doug is smiling, though, and so as we often do, we have to go to Doug before we really dig into the content and ask what is on Doug's brain that is making him laugh and or smile before the start of the show.
You just said shot caller, which made me think baller, shot caller. That's what I was smiling about.
It's a great phrase. I'm not a baller. I'm a shot caller. It's such a good phrase, and we'll see who that guy is going to be of the Hornets. Whoever the shot caller is right now, I guess, is this Mitch Kupchak's real parting gift to us, Doug? Because if Mitch Kupchak is still technically the general manager before they hire whoever's going to be that guy permanently, then I guess the last move isn't going to be trading for these first round picks. It's going to be signing Marques Bolden to a 10-day. No, all you had to do was just chill, and that was going to be your everlasting last move. But now they added some big man depth. Charlotte Hornets earlier this morning, they signed Marques Bolden, former Duke Blue Devil, by the way, to a 10-day contract to add some depth to the center position. Don't know what this means for Nathan Mensah. Don't know really what this means for any of those guys that are behind Nick Richards and Mark Williams, of course, if he comes back. What do you have to say about Marques Bolden now being the latest acquisition?
Just another in a long line of Dukies who are being connected to the Charlotte Hornet. I think, if I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, there might be a shadow Langdon government that is pulling the strings, calling the shots in Charlotte, bringing all these Dukies on board. Marques Bolden, just another one. But look, I like this move. I would like it more than going after Nerlens, where you're going to have to commit a little bit more money. This is a 10-day. This is a tryout. This is a guy that got waived by Milwaukee, which is a good team that has plenty of depth at that position. They don't need the services of Bolden. This is a chance for you to go rough hunting for some diamonds. And Marques Bolden could be one of those diamonds, because guess what? Guess what Marques Bolden can do, Walker, that no other Charlotte Hornet big currently employed can do? Guess what he can do?
He can rebound.
Well, he can do that too, but guess what else he can do?
I thought it was
That's
so
not
sure.
what I was thinking.
I was so sure that was going to be right. What can he do?
I don't even know if he can rebound, honestly. He can shoot. He can shoot the ball. He can shoot a three-point shot. I saw him do it in the preseason against Chicago. He's done it in stops in Cleveland and with this Wisconsin Herd G League team. He doesn't put a ton up, but you wouldn't expect a guy his size to put a ton up. But when he does, he's somewhat efficient at knocking down three-point shots. So if he does get some time on this 10-day contract, it will be exciting. It will be revelatory to see a center that can actually put up an outside shot. And I hope he's not afraid to.
The reason I said I think he can rebound is because right now, or at least at the end of the 6-game winning streak that he had for the G League's Wisconsin Herd, he was averaging 17 points, 13.8 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks over a 6-game winning streak. And so I was like, okay, that's maybe a little harsh for Nick Richards, but he's more of the offensive rebounder. Same thing with Mark Williams when he comes back. But that's right. Maybe Bolden can help them shoot a little bit. The Nathan Mensah experiment, I hate it because it wasn't anything that was his fault. He was never supposed to have this type type of responsibility whatsoever. In fact, honestly, I mean, you might not even want him getting those types of minutes in the G League, and that's not anything to his fault, right? The Charlotte Hornets were in a bad way when Mark Williams went down, and we could not get him healthy whatsoever. Still, we're a couple weeks out before Mitch Kupchak told you that he might return. And Nick Richards has been a guy that's actually been in and out a little bit more. They never signed anybody this offseason to help them at the big man position. And so Nathan Mensah gets thrust in there and started playing 20 minutes a game. There were some games where I thought he showed some nice effort, but it's really tough to compete at that level. And so here they bring in Marques Bolden, who is contributing quite a bit to the Wisconsin Herd before he comes over to the Charlotte Hornets. And so Mensah probably going to the G League, and then we'll see what else they decide to do with that center position. But you're right, Doug. They are trying to, especially with the Nerlens Noel conversation that we had, where they were maybe going to trade for him. They wanted some big man depth pretty badly, and I guess we'll see if they have it here. Only a 10-day contract, so who knows what happens.
Yeah, effort was never a question with Mensah, and I thought he gave good effort every time he stepped on the floor, and I thought he made some improvements during that time. But he's not an NBA level center. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. And so it's nice to see that the Hornets got a little bit of a taste of victory, and now the one thing that they didn't address over the trade deadline was this depth. They addressed the point guard depth. They addressed some wing defense a little bit. And now they've gone and they're at least attempting here with this Bolden signing to address the other issues. I'm telling you, Walker, they're going to make a run at this play-in thing. We talked about it a few episodes ago. The math is not totally out of their favor yet. I think they are sniffing something, maybe glue, maybe blood in the water. I don't know what they're sniffing.
You're sniffing glue. That's what you're doing.
I'm crazy. I'm a sicko. Buddy. Fruit salad, yummy, yummy.
You are. You're the one that's sniffing the Elmers. Just put it on down, buddy. Twist that thing up and put it away.
But we should talk about what this means, in terms of Mark Williams. Still out, not a ton of word other than, we're not going to know for what? I think Mitch Kupchak said 4 weeks. An update on Mark Williams, this back injury. It looks like it's going to be a while before we see him. And this is just another sign in if you're reading tea leaves here, Bolden is a big old tea leaf that says, don't expect Mark Williams anytime soon.
Well, the thing that does comfort me a little bit is the fact that this is a 10-day. I think it would be more of an indictment if you traded for Nerlens Noel to have him just as an insurance policy for the rest of the season. And so you can do whatever you want. You can just let this contract roll on out and say, hey, thanks, Marcus. We appreciate the time. Mark Williams is expected to be back. And so if we follow the Mitch Kupchak timeline, once he spoke to media after the trade deadline, he told us that we're probably expecting him back anywhere around 4 weeks. It's been 2 weeks since that press conference. So in 2 weeks, if Mark Williams isn't ramping up, then we can start to worry a little bit more. But we'll see. I mean, again, as I've mentioned a million times, we never get good news. I just hope within the next 2 weeks we get good news about Mark Williams.
And you and I were discussing pre-show whether we should do a segment, and maybe we will tomorrow or something, about how much of what we saw over those past 3 games is fake or a mirage and how much of it is real. I would say that them going out and exploring 10-day contracts for a Bolden tells me that the franchise at least feels like what they saw over those 3 games is very, very real, very sustainable, and worth continuing to invest in, because I think this was their final roster spot, and the Hornets are not, they have not as a franchise always been willing, especially in a season where you've only won 13 games and you've lost 40 plus now. That's not typically a time when they invest in the final roster spot. So obviously they see something here, or they're sniffing something here.
Final thing about Marques Bolden, I didn't realize I had this take until I started watching him a little bit more too, but Marques Bolden, kudos to him for undergoing a pretty decent sized body transformation. If you'll remember him at Duke, he's a big dude, beefy dude. And Marcus was kind of thought as this underwhelming player after being a high quality prospect going to the Blue Devils program. And now you watch him be a little bit of a shooter, as you mentioned, be athletic enough to go after 14 rebounds, which a lot of time coaches will tell you rebounding is want to. It's getting position, it's fighting, and it's want to.
Hitting first.
And here he is grabbing 14, 17 points. Honestly, this is a success story just within itself, having watched where he came from. And so that's an uplifting story to see him, and hopefully just for his own sake, he can find a way to stick with this roster, who does need some big man depth, or go somewhere else and thrive, or just be even a role player and get a contract that is longer than 10-day. But like, it is cool to see this guy, if you're an ACC fan, to watch him transform into a player that's actually pretty useful right now. And NBA teams are taking a chance on him. Like, he was at Duke a few years ago. Yeah. This has been a long fight for him. So cool for him.
Totally. And a big thing for him, and it's been this way since he came out of Duke, is feel for the game, knowing where to be and when to move and when not to move and what to do. Like, all of those things that are instinctual didn't come to him naturally. He's had to develop those over time. And so the big question will be how much of that for him has developed. I think fortunately for him, he's coming on to a Hornets team that is fundamentally different when it comes to playmaking, when it comes to moving the basketball. So at least offensively, it won't. I mean, that's part of the reason why I feel bad for Mensah, is that he was on a disaster of a team. It's not even like he could hide a little bit some of his deficiencies, because no LaMelo, no playmaking, ball wasn't moving, defense was a disaster top to bottom, not much room for him to succeed. There's going to be room for Bolden if he's willing, and this will be an opportunity for him, by the way, just like it was an opportunity for Trey Mann, just like this is an opportunity for Micic, and you see what those guys have done with the opportunity. I think Bolden's going to feel the same way. He was buried in Milwaukee. Now he gets an opportunity to showcase himself. That guy's going to come out with a fire under his bleep.
Yeah, like big rebounding shooters, like Brook Lopez, exactly what you have there. Bobby Portis can shoot. I like it. We'll see what happens. I talked myself into a 10-day.
Let's go
now
sniffing.
I'm sniffing the glue. We're sniffing the glue, baby.
Don't
Fruit salad,
sniff glue.
Yummy.
Then we should disclaimer. Don't do that.
Yeah. Don't do what we did. Don't do that.
Don't.
Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We sniff more. No, I'm playing. Don't do that. The joke's over. We're going to move on from it. Doug had a conversation with Ky Carlin of USA Today, covering the Philadelphia 76ers, to discuss what Elton Brand might be like as the Charlotte Hornets GM. Is there even a chance that he leaves Philadelphia? Is the criticism fair? Because this was the guy we liked the least to be in charge of the Hornets roster. So Ky Carlin will give you all of that with Doug in just a moment. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. That's it. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you can watch the winnings roll in. It's also demon time on Prize Picks. That sounds exciting. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons, goblins, it's the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
Back here on the Locked On Hornets podcast, and we're continuing to talk about the search for a new general manager, possibly a new executive vice president of basketball operations for the Charlotte Hornets. Yesterday, we talked to Evan Dammarell of the Locked On Cavaliers podcast about the possibility of bringing on Mike Gansey in one of those roles. And now we turn our attention to a name that you might find interesting in Elton Brand of the Philadelphia 76ers. Interesting because it seems like maybe he's already taken his name out of the hat, but we still wanted to learn a little bit about a name that has been floated for that job. So we turn now to Ky Carlin of Sixers Wire, USA Today, and former host of the Locked On Sixers podcast, so a family member here. Ky, thanks for joining us.
What's going on, Doug? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's talk about Elton Brand. And first, I want, before we get into kind of his background and, sort of the vibe towards him in Philadelphia, the vibe towards him in Charlotte, I want to ask why you think that Elton Brand seemingly has taken his name out of the hat in this conversation before we talk about maybe him putting his name back in the hat.
See, that kind of surprised me initially when the reports came out that he took his name out of the hat, just for the fact that it kind of seemed like a really big opportunity for Elton to take over his own team, kind of similarly to the way he was running the Sixers in, when he initially took the job until the team hired Daryl Morey. And then once Morey was hired, Morey obviously, and with Morey and Brand, it's a collaborative effort here in Philly. But obviously, Daryl does seem to have the final say on like a lot of these basketball related decisions. It's not Elton anymore. So it kind of was a little surprising that Elton pulled his name out of the hat. But another reason that maybe he did pull his name out of the hat was because there's familiarity in Philadelphia. He's already kind of settled here. He may not want to move. Like there are like different factors, like not even just outside of basketball, that like maybe Elton like decided, you know what, like it's really not worth it for me to kind of uproot everything and go to Charlotte. Like there are a lot of different reasons for it, but I think you and I talked about it a little bit before. This doesn't mean that like maybe he changes his mind down the road or something, and all of a sudden like he's the new GM / president of basketball operations for the Charlotte Hornets. Like there's always that possibility.
No doubt. Moving stinks, okay? I mean, you got to find a reputable moving company. That's always difficult. They're going to break something. Like, you don't know what it is, but they are going to, even the best, and this is not even me, like, maligning moving companies. They are just going to naturally, when they take your stuff that they don't care about, really, and they are going to break something. And so you've got to deal with that. You got to find boxes. It's a whole thing. So I totally understand if he doesn't want to move. But I want to go to a natural question off of what you just said, because the Sixers hire Daryl Morey. It seems like he has the final say. Elton Brand used to be that guy. It's kind of a unique situation where they hire someone to take your job, but they don't fire you. So take us kind of through that history. Why was Elton Brand the man, and then all of a sudden he became the man behind the man, or the man under the man?
I think, when you look at what Elton did when he was making those final basketball decisions, he made big moves. Like, he orchestrated the Jimmy Butler deal. He then orchestrated the Tobias Harris deal. And that was the year the Sixers, they were one Kawhi Leonard bounce away from probably getting to the Eastern Conference Finals and then the finals, you know what I mean? So that was probably their best year out of this run that they've had with Joel Embiid. And then I think what did him in was the following offseason, giving Tobias Harris the max contract, and then bringing in Al Horford and losing Butler to for Josh Richardson, sign and trade with Miami. So I think those moves look good on paper, but then obviously that was such a disaster of a season. They were the number 6 seed going into the playoffs, and the bubble got swept. And then once Daryl Morey became available, it just kind of it made sense to just bring Daryl in, and really ever since Daryl has been here, Sixers were the number 1 seed. They were then the 4 seed, and they were then last year, I believe they were the 3 seed. So it's one of those things where just like it was just once Daryl became available and the history he has, it made sense to bring him in.
Well, and take us through that offseason that you talk about that people have. Well, I don't know. I'll ask you, do you think that offseason was fairly or unfairly maligned? Because, I mean, just looking at when the news broke that Elton's name was in the hat before he took it out of the hat, you could scroll along the Twitter timeline, and it seemed like a lot of people in Philadelphia would offer him a ride to the airport. Like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of love in the city of brotherly love for Elton Brand. Do you think that offseason was fairly or unfairly maligned?
Well, good thing for everybody. Philadelphia sports fans they're just naturally, they understand. They're just a group of understanding people, but they're very rational. I don't know. The 2019 offseason was just really tough, just because Butler, once he left for Miami, you had no choice but to also re-sign Tobias Harris, because you couldn't lose both, right? Like, if you look back at that trade deadline, and you give up what you gave up to the Clippers to get Tobias, you couldn't let him walk. And Tobias has been a really good player. Just unfortunately, he's being paid like a superstar, and a superstar he is not. But he's a really, really good player. So people were upset over that. And then you brought in Al Horford, who on paper and in theory, it sounded like a really good addition, but that didn't work. So a lot of people were just upset, mainly because of the Horford addition. and the Tobias contract. So I think it's a little unfair to give him to, kind of judge him so harshly like on these types of moves. But unfortunately, when you look at what happened in the 2019-20 season, it was such a disaster here in Philly that offseason is going to be the one that's going to get red underlined, red circled, and unfortunately that falls under Elton Brand's hand,
Right, and it kind of gets locked in, right, because they don't allow him an opportunity to unwind, some of those bad decisions or course correct. He didn't really even get an opportunity to course correct all that much because, as you said, Morey became available and they wanted to strike and get that opportunity while it was there. So it sort of kind of locks in all of that. But he does stay with the organization, and that's what I'm probably most curious about, is that his decision to stay with the organization and the organization's decision, despite hiring Morey, to keep him in the front office. And that sort of leads me to like relationships, because so much of general management or front office is about building relationships within the team, but also building relationships outside of the team and making sure you have good connections across the league when you're trying to make these deals, whether it's agents or executives with those teams. You've got to have good relationships. People have to like you. I think it was a problem under the Rich Cho era, is that he wasn't much of a people person in Charlotte. And so it hurt his relationship with the team, and it hurt his ability to go out there and make deals happen. So talk to me about that. How was he able to kind of, despite them hiring Morey, he hangs around? What's his relationship like in sort of the team dynamic and then across the league?
As far as I know, Elton is very well liked by the players. As far as I know. So even to that point, like if Charlotte were to bring Elton in and he changes his mind on everything about the position, that he would have a great relationship with the players in Charlotte. I think it's because Elton was a former player. Elton played in the league for so long. And despite all the injuries that he unfortunately had to battle through, he was a multiple-time All-Star, did a lot of really good things with the Clippers. So that relays into now this new transitional role that he's in, that helps with the relationships with these players. And I think that that's part of the reason why he's still in Philly, because he's able to talk to these guys maybe in a way that Daryl isn't able to. So I think that's why Elton is still around here.
Great. That's Ky Carlin. You can check out his work on Sixers Wire for USA Today. Ky, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that insight into Brand.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. I appreciate it a lot.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Good stuff from Ky Carlin. We can talk a little bit more about how we would feel if Elton Brand was the next general manager, and then we'll get to ticket prices going up. I know we're excited about the Charlotte Hornets, but now it feels like the Hornets themselves are getting a little too excited. We'll get to that in just a moment. Last segment of Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. And so today I want to tell you to have that opportunity. If you need that opportunity, you can go to BetterHelp and you can say how you really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week over and over again. That's where BetterHelp can help you. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off of your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. You can visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Before we get to ticket prices, Doug did want to recap a little of what Ky had to say about Elton Brand. Did he ease some of your concerns? If you were to just take the word of one Ky Carlin on how Elton Brand would do as the decision maker, did he ease any of those concerns? What was noteworthy to you from that interview?
I think somewhat. I've always found it interesting that Elton Brand kept the job, and this is a relationship business. And so, I think the worst thing that you can do is hire a general manager who can't form great relationships within your organization or outside of the NBA, because it's all going to blow up eventually. Like, you could be the best capologist in the world, and you could even be the best scout in the world and no player talent. But if nobody likes you, then you're not going to succeed in this business. And so the fact that Elton Brand is liked, you can scoff at that if you want, but that is something. And I think he wasn't ever fully given the opportunity in Philadelphia to figure out those one or two bad decisions that he made with the Harris and the Horford contract. And so we just don't, there is a big unknown sitting there of like, what would have happened had they not hired more? Would he have turned things around? Because like Ky said, I mean, this is a guy in Elton that shepherded a team that was a sniff away from the NBA Finals. I mean, you have to give him some credit for that, even if Philadelphia won't.
And I know that Ky was also talking about the player relationships, as you mentioned. I know you talked about that a little bit, but it does matter, and especially from somebody that played in the NBA at a high level. Like, I wonder how much that matters when Mike Gansey, former D1 player, former good D1 player, undrafted NBA player, got hurt with Miami, and so never even really got to the regular season, but stayed in the NBA somehow, some way, forever. How much does it matter that Mike Gansey was it number 1 overall pick, baller, all-star, Elton Brand at that top? You know, we can go to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan.
Kupchak. I mean, Kupchak was a good player in his own right. I mean,
right. Yeah. So, you know, there's different levels to this.
But no one viewed him that way. You know, you're going to view Langdon, you know, his players will view Langdon as like, in a way that I don't think they would Kupchak, because Kupchak played in such a different era.
That's right. That's right. So we'll see who it ends up being. I wonder just how long this is going to take, like what the rules even are because you're going after you're going after people that currently have a position. I mean, it's not even that some of these guys are just out there on the open market. And so there has to be rules to this. I guess I don't know the rules of hiring some people that are currently acting as sitting general manager or sitting assistant GM, but you were right, Doug, when you talked about you have to feel like these guys with a plan, and Plotkin and Schnall would have somebody made up by now, or their mind made up already, and they, you know, maybe they just can't hire that guy.
Yeah, but I mean, to me, this is the offseason for general managers, right? You're post-deadline, You're scouting for the draft, but you're not quite in like ramp it all up mode. So like you don't want to hire a GM during the actual NBA offseason, because that's when things are heating up. So this would, if there's going to be a time to make a move, this would be the time. And it's not like a coach or anything like that where you're going, well, that's a playoff team. They can't like lose their coach right before they go to the playoffs. It doesn't matter if the GM moves on. And a lot of these guys too are not EVPs of basketball operations. They're not even the head guy that they're looking at. So it would not be, you know, I think a enormous loss for the team that they're taking them from.
All right, let's go to ticket price conversation here, Doug, because Gabe Plotkin, Rick Schnall, they completed a series of meetings with ticket holders who will be affected by upcoming renovations at Spectrum Center. And so attendees included holders of 920 seats whose ticket prices will go up by an average of nearly 80% next season, with either improvements to existing private club access, all-inclusive food, soda, beer, wine, and parking, or as part of their seats now being included in the club and all-inclusive seating areas for the first time. And so completing that series of meetings, it leaves some fans, I would imagine, not exactly thrilled that they're going to be paying 80% more, even if you have better amenities that are coming with those prices. Doug, what do you have to say about Gabe Plotkin, Rick Schnall, who are trying to put their fingerprints all over this organization in a positive way? Renovations to Spectrum Center, even a positive way towards the on-court product, but they're also asking you to pay for it just a little bit.
Sounds like they're trying to put their fingerprints on your wallet, taking your money. Here's what I think about this. The timing is terrible. This is a shame. Like, you know, the Hornets have not made the playoffs since 2016. They haven't won a playoff series since 2002. They've been bad for a couple of seasons now. Not a lot to watch. And so you're going to the people that are generally, you know, other than sort of the brokers who just buy tickets to sell them, although I don't know why anyone in their right mind would do that for the Charlotte Hornets. But you're going to your most dedicated fans and saying, we need you to pay more now. to subsidize everything else that we're doing in terms of, and they're selling it as, oh, we're upgrading. And one of the more absurd sales I saw, and this was sent to me from someone that reads Every Hornets box score, and they have one of the sections that's closer to the court, and the sell was, hey, we're adding more seats. And it's like, well, that doesn't benefit me, right? You adding more seats, it's a math, but in that respect, it's a math equation, right? If you double the number of seats that are closer to the court, all you have to do is keep half of the people that were there to begin with, and you're still fine. You could lose 50% of the people that were already paying, and you'll still come out even. And if you get one more to buy one of the new seats, then you'll come out ahead. Here's the thing. This is a reality of a team whose valuation skyrocketed when Michael Jordan sold the team. Okay? You've got a group of people that had to come in, and none of them, as far as I know, are billionaires with a B. They might be multi-millionaires with two M's, but none of these guys are Ishbia or these sort of top class, Fortune 500 billionaire type Scrooge McDucks diving through the money pit. These are guys that kind of had to scrap together the means to buy this team, and now you're seeing where the scrapping is happening. They're going to go and try to say, all right, how do we pay for X, Y, and Z when it comes to all of this? And so I think this is not entirely unexpected. This is not surprising. They want to build a practice facility. All the stuff about the arena, that was already baked in. And I think the city is paying for a lot of that as part of a lease agreement. So none of that as a sales pitch makes any sense to me.
Yeah, and it's through their tourist funds, I think. That's where it's coming from mostly as far as what the city is paying for.
So you're getting double taxed. So that's what I'm saying. Like as a fan, if you live in Charlotte and you pay for season tickets, you're getting double taxed, but they want to pay for, a practice facility or whatever.
Right, and maybe I need to do more on this. I think it's more so tourist funds like hotels. I think that's right, more so than the actual citizens of Charlotte having to pay for this.
Okay, but here's the thing. Money that goes into a pot can be used for a variety of things. It could be used for more tourism, or it could be used for schools, or it could be used for roads.
Infrastructure.
So you're getting money might not be coming out of your pocket, but money that could be used to fund things that you need to live are being taken and moved. And listen, we've already had that discussion. That money has already been distributed. There's no reason to argue about that anymore. But you don't use that as a sales pitch. That's not a sales pitch to take more of my money, is what I'm saying.
Oh, no, it's absolutely not. I just wanted to make sure that's what the people knew about. But yes, you're right. It could be. It's the whole David Tepper asking for money to pay for a new stadium, getting rid of Bank of America Stadium. It's here we are saying, well, he's like, I could pay for a third. PSL owners could pay for a third. And then here we are paying taxes for a new stadium that David Tepper could pay for, when in reality we could be using that money for infrastructure, education, anything like that, as you just mentioned. That's totally true. It's a little bit of a different level talking about renovations compared to a new football stadium. And so still, it's in the same neighborhood. Last thing, I did want to tell you a little bit more of the information, because according to Eric Spanberg of the Charlotte Business Journal, does a great job. He said a small number of tickets in the lower level that were previously excluded from private club membership and other amenities, 38 seats in the first two rows of the baseline, will have to pay a whopping 225%. 225% more to retain their seats. And the team confirmed.
How much of a sicko are you? That's the question that they're asking. 225% is saying, how sick? Are you hospital sick, or are you just, I'm staying home from work sick?
The team confirmed those changes to Charlotte Business Journal, as well as an overall average price hike of 15% for all season ticket buyers. Last thing, it's exactly the point I wanted to hit on. So they're banking on people that already own those seats. And the Hornets have been bad since, the inception of the second iteration. So if you are there, having already understood the history of what this team is, with Plotkin and Schnall wanting this to not be there anymore, they're like, hey, you've already paid for it when it was a bad product. We're not going to be bad. We're going to be good. It's me and Rich Snob handling business. So go ahead and give me more money, because you're going to be able to come out on the other side of this, and you're still going to pay for the money for a good product. And we know about the Hornets fans. They show up for a good product. They've shown up at times for bad products. So if there is a good one, then the Hornets are going to be there cheering. Hornets fans are going to be cheering, let's go Hornets.
Well, you just hit on something. You said that Rick Schnall and Gabe Plotkin are basically saying, hey, we're going to be good, but that's not a given.
It's not. It is
But
not.
I would say this hike, they better retool. They better not go through a rebuild where you're going to be bad for like 4 or 5 years. Because how sustainable could that be if you're asking people to pay that much more and locking that in, not for just the people that have been there before, but the people that will come next? How can you expect them to sustain that kind of investment through bad basketball? I think it signals to me that this organization actually is going to retool and try to get this team into contention sooner rather than later. Short term, I think this can have some negative effects. If people do walk away, that's going to mean more away fans. That's going to mean less of a great home experience than we've already seen, which has not been very good. It means the resale market is only look. If tickets go up, even if you retain those tickets and you try to sell the Warriors game or the Lakers game, it just means that the one person that is a Lakers fan that has disposable income, they're going to be the ones that can afford to go to that game, not the people that are actual fans of this team. So some short-term effects there. One final thing from me, a little nugget in this Spanberg article that I hadn't seen previously reported is that Michael Jordan retained a 5% share of the Hornets. So that's the percentage there that's being reported, 5%. Not lot.
Not much at all. In fact, it feels like we would have guessed the over on that, right?
For sure.
If it was at 5.5, we would have said, oh, we'll take the easy over. And here it is only at 5%. I mean, that goes to show you, like, he just wanted just a tiny bit of that passive income. And he didn't, who knows?
Well, it's an econ play, right? It's a money play. That 5% is a money play. 5% is not, I want to be, making decisions or having say. I mean, he might get to hang around, in certain circles or be invited to certain things. But to me, this is Schnall and Plotkin's game if it's only 5%.
That's the point. All right. Pay a lot more money. We promise we're not going to hike up prices on you. We're not going to do that for you. We're still free anywhere you get your podcast. We're still free if you want to check us out on YouTube. Free, baby. You just got to watch a few ads every now and then, but you don't have to pay a thing. Don't think about it. Don't go.
Maybe we should raise our prices. Here's what I'll do. I will get a nice haircut. I will invest in some suits. So your eyes, if you watch on YouTube, your eyes will be pleased a little bit more. Maybe if I don't wear the suit, they'll be pleased a little bit more.
Maybe
I'm going to think about this. I think we should raise the prices a little bit.
All right. Doug just talked himself into wearing a suit. It's just his birthday suit for you guys on YouTube. So hopefully we don't see him wear that whatsoever. In fact, I would pay more for you to wear exactly what you're wearing right now. I would do that as your co-host. I would contribute. If you do want to pay just a little bit, then you can subscribe to Doug Branson's Subtext. You can find that information on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, for more of his sniffing glue, depraved Hornets thoughts. And you can listen to me, Walker Mail, on WFNZ every weekday, also free from 12 to 3 p.m., 92.7 FM. Have a great rest of your day. We'll be back with you tomorrow.